What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I imagine a lot of people who are not familiar with Marvel Comics saw the trailer for X-Men Days of Future Past, and when they saw Peter Dinklage, they couldn't help but scratch their heads and ask the question, who the hell is that guy playing? So in an effort to shine some light on this, we are going to have a discussion about Bolivar Trask, and at the end of this video, I want to have somewhat of an in-depth philosophical discussion about him, because he's one of my favorite characters of Marvel Comics, not because of what he does, but because of his reason behind it. So Bolivar Trask, of course, was a human, and he was an anthropologist, meaning that he studied human beings, both past and present. He studied cultures, societies, arts, all different kinds of things, anything that had to do with the progress of humanity. His belief system was that a time would come when mutants would eventually wage war against humans. It may be one mutant who starts it, it may be that all the mutants wage war, but the fact remains that unless something is done, then humans are going to be at the mercy of mutants, simply because they don't really stand a chance against the upper echelon characters in the Marvel Universe. This was kind of compounded by the fact that he had two children, both of which were mutants. The first was Larry Trask, and Larry Trask was a precognitive, meaning that he could see into the future. He was very, very powerful, so it was very rare that he was ever wrong. For example, he looked into the future and saw the assassination of Senator Robert Kelly that would lead into the Days of Future Past storyline. His second child was Tanya Trask, I think her name was Tanya, and she was a time traveler, but she was actually lost in the time stream and ended up in the 39th century, where she became Madame Sanctity under the eye of Rachel Summers. Now, eventually, she tries to jump back into the past and stop her father's Sentinel program, but Rachel Summers stops her. But as Bolivar Trask doesn't necessarily see the psychic battle that goes on, ultimately this kind of reinforces the idea, along with his son's reinforcement of this idea, that mutants are inherently dangerous. And of course, bear in mind that at this point, his son doesn't realize that he has any kind of mutant powers whatsoever. Now, the interesting thing to me is that the Sentinel program was not initially designed to be this oppressive group over mutants. The Sentinel program was designed to be a protection for humans against mutants. And the problem was that almost as soon as the Sentinels were created by Bolivar Trask, they revolted. And the logic of the Sentinels kind of followed, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, it followed in this particular order. The Sentinels rationalized that they were programmed to protect human beings. And they were programmed to protect human beings from the mutant threat. But Sentinels themselves were superior to mutants, otherwise they would not have been tasked with protecting humans from them. If the Sentinels are superior to mutants, and mutants are superior to humans, then the Sentinels are superior to both mutants and humans. And so Sentinels began to sort of have this collective consciousness, which was led by the entity Master Mold, who was this super Sentinel, so to speak. And they kind of began to develop their own strategies, their own kind of plans, their own method of doing things. And they became quite dangerous. Eventually they were disbanded, they were destroyed, but they were brought back by Larry Trask sometime later in the future. Now, with regards to why Bolivar Trask did what he did, this is the kind of thing that I love to discuss. It's really kind of what I like to get into, because the question that you really have to ask here is Bolivar Trask wrong for having his belief system? Is he wrong to believe that a time will come when a mutant somewhere will become so incredibly powerful that he may, even unwillingly or unwittingly, pose a threat to humanity and possibly even obliterate humanity? Or that a mutant will come along that's so powerful that they will wage a war against humanity because they will view humanity as being obsolete? I mean, there were several instances in the Marvel Comics where Bolivar Trask would sit down and I think he actually agreed to a debate on mutant-human relations with Xavier, but his mind wasn't changed. And to me, I understood that, because Xavier does not speak for all of mutant kind. Xavier speaks for those with like minds, but Xavier does not speak for Magneto. For example, he doesn't speak for Apocalypse, Mr. Sinister. He doesn't speak for these guys. They have their own agendas, they have their own plans, which they intend to implement at every possible turn. As an anthropologist and a person who studies the history of humanity, I highly doubt there's really been any instances where Bolivar Trask has read on an example of a more advanced society encountering a less advanced society, and the two of them being able to coexist amicably. In virtually every instance where a more advanced society has encountered a less advanced society, it's involved the extermination of the less advanced society. Christopher Columbus and the citizenry of San Salvador, English separatists and Native Americans, English citizens and their expansion into Africa and West African territories. These are all instances where entire groups of less advanced people were eliminated or they were folded into the more advanced society. But suffice it to say, the less advanced society as it was discovered ceased to exist. If there's any one thing that I agree with, it's the ideology that people exist to pass on their genes, that people exist to try to survive. And so to me, much like our discussion with the character Galactus, to say that Bolivar Trask is wrong is to say that he's wrong for simply trying to survive. Now, I'm not saying his methods are good. I'm not saying that creating these giant robots designed to effectively obliterate mutants was a great idea. Not at all. But I am saying that his rationale behind it, his belief system, and why he views the supposed threat of mutant kind the way he does is very justifiable. Because at the end of the day, mutants are humans. And mutants are subject to the same prejudices as humans. They're subject to the same desires, physical, emotional, spiritual, as human beings are. It's the reason why we have mutant villains who just simply want to get money. We have mutant villains who want to acquire physical pleasure, and there are mutant villains who want to acquire emotional pleasure. For example, a character like Graviton, when he first discovered his ability to manipulate gravity, he relished in the fact that he was able to terrify people with it. So, at the end of the day, I think the important thing to bear in mind here is that when it comes to a character like Bolivar Trask, he's complicated, he's interesting, but his viewpoints aren't extreme, and I wouldn't necessarily categorize them as wrong, because he is a human being encountering a more advanced city, or a more advanced civilization, and is fearful of his own extermination. So, with that being said, I will catch you guys later. Peace.